Good morning and welcome back. Apologies in advance, guys. It's been about 3 weeks since I managed to get onto this project, and I know quite a few of you are waiting for this video. I've even had one guy comment in another video, when's this video going to come out? Unfortunately, I've got other projects I've had to take priority, you know, the normal sort of things that happen in life, and I've had to get on with them. But hey, today we've managed to get back onto this project, and I've utilised those 3 weeks to sort of order all the parts that I need to hopefully complete this project. I've done a few things off camera, but nothing major, but I'll show you that first and then we'll get on with this project. Okay, so jobs I've done. I've actually used some sort of wrap-round conduit around here. I'll show you that in a bit more detail in a minute. To join this wire together, it's the thumb throttle and the actual controller. The two wires back together, back to the controller. Then the controller wire's gone off to the controller, and I've joined the controller wire and the thumb throttle down to here, round, down into here, made all the connections and pushed it back through the hole, and then put the grommet in place. So that's all looking fairly tidy. The connections that are in here are very simple. You know, there's 4 connections. We're not using the 2 brake sensor connectors. They got pushed back in. And then, like I said, there's just the thumb throttle on the display. So hopefully I haven't made a mistake by prematurely pressing them back into this tube here without actually testing the full system first. So there's 2 types of wrap I normally use on e-bikes. There's this, which is a sort of a thin one, a more discreet one, and being as we're going for sort of a more slick, you know, look on this bike, I've just used this thin stuff. Now, if I'm using, doing an e-bike sort of with brake sensors all on and that sort of thing, I tend to go for this bit of a thicker stuff here. It's good for actually, you know, connecting the actual brake sensor cables to the brake cables, and it looks quite chunky and quite effective. I'll show you that on a different bike. Okay, so I'll take you over to Pebbles here. Yes, we have got a bike called Pebbles. You can see the thicker stuff here. It looks quite chunky, and I quite like the look of this, you know, and it's a lot more rigid and holds it all together. So this is what we've used on here. So both options are good. Obviously, this is a little bit more armoured, so if you're using this sort of this wrap actually in a situation where it might get clonked, for instance, underneath the motorways where I also use it, it's a good choice because it's got a bit armoured and gives you a bit of protection. So when I last worked on this bike here, I was trying to get this connector out of this hole here. Turns out I couldn't get it out here, being as this was just about wide enough to get the connector through. I just wasn't managing to get the angle to pull it through. Did do a little bit of damage when I did eventually get it through. You can probably see it there to the case near, but the pins are all intact. And I think what I'll do, once I've made that connection, I'll just put some shrink on it, you know, shrink tape on it and shrink that, and that'll be fine. Now, I made this hole a little bit wider. Didn't want to make it any wider now, too. Obviously, every time you put a hole in the frame, you're weakening the strength, but it had to be done because I also realised once I connected that cable together, it was going to be considerably longer, and it was going to go up to here, hit the top of the pipe, and I needed that little bit of movement just to be able to sort of bend it around and get it back up there. So hopefully that will work now. So another problem we had here, we've got this hole here. I think we're probably going to have to make that a little bit wider still, and that's where the cables from the battery mount's going to go. Now, the actual cables on the battery mount are quite short, and they're certainly not long enough for me to put them in there and then to come out of here and then me cut these and solder them together. And in the reverse way, this cable is not long enough to sort of go in there, up there, and come out here so I can solder at this point. So I had to buy some more cables, disconnect them from the battery mount, and solder the new ones on. So I did that a couple of weeks ago. We'll quickly rewind to that so you can have a look what I did very briefly, and then we'll get on to mounting that in and trying to get these cables soldered together. Okay, so we're all set up in the workshop. We're going to resolder these longer wires onto this battery housing. Got the electric solder heating up here. Prefer to use my gas one normally, but that's packed up, so we're stuck with the electric one, I'm afraid. So I'm going to take this apart. So we've just got 2 screws here. Okay, and we've got a backslide here. There we go. So we can have no mistakes. We're going to check which side the wires are going on from the back. Looks like positives on the left, so we'll just take a quick photo of that just to... Okay, and this looks like this disassembles here. And as far as we can tell, we've got the wires are divided into 2 and are connected to 2 contacts. These 2 contacts on the right for the positive, and these 2 contacts on the left for the negative. Already got some wire, same gauge as the old wires, which is a gauge 12. Got that from AliExpress, and they're a metre each or a metre and a half each, so plenty of wire there. We'll get them soldered on. So I think the first thing, if that's heated up, is we're going to see if we can't disconnect these two wires from here by melting the solder. Okay, so I'm going to quickly just take a measurement of this hole here. It's been a while since I drilled it, so I don't remember what it is. So this is the hole where the cable's going to go through, so we'll just measure this out. Lock that off. That's approximately 8mm. Now I'm just going to grab the battery box here. As you probably just saw in the B-roll a minute ago, I've really well shrink wrap this so this doesn't get burned on the hole, because I don't intend to put a grommet in there and, you know, make the hole even bigger still. So let's quickly just measure that. And we've got 9.5mm there. So we're going to have to increase this from the 8mm hole to a 10mm hole with our special contraption and get that done. So let's do that and then we'll move on. Okay, we're only 2 minutes into it, we're starting to get a problem. My special contraption here isn't going to work. Maximum is 8mm drill bit and that, so that's not going to work. So we're going to have to try and just go through with a standard drill at an angle. I don't like to do it, but what choice have we got? I think at some point I have to invest in a stepper drill bit. Incidentally, anybody wants to know any of the parts in this project or any of the tools I use, I'm not going to list them all in the description. There's just too many of them. Just drop me something in the comments, yeah, and I'll send you a link, and you know you can hunt that out for yourselves. Okay, so let's have a go at this. Let's see if we can get in at an angle. I'm going to go half a millimetre each time. Yeah, it doesn't like that. Okay, and I think I'm going to go through from the other side as well. Wiggle it a little bit. Okay, that's 8.5. Going to go 9, 9.5, 10. I won't bore you with all that. I'll bring you in at the end. Okay, so that's through. That wasn't too bad. I'm going to get a draw wire, see if I can thread it into here, see if we can get it out the bottom here, and see if we can pull these cables through. Okay, so not much draw with the draw cable. Let's try the cables direct through and see if that helps. Okay, I can see it. I'm just going to grab a hook actually and see if I can pull it through. So this is a seal, an O-ring removal hook, so that should get in there and get that out hopefully. And there she is, she's through, brilliant. And so I've left these cables full length, so all I'm going to do now is take the negative, tape it round the red, and hopefully that will draw that one through as well. And hopefully we'll be able to jiggle this one through. There we go, and we're out. So we'll take this. I left these cables long in anticipation of this. We'll trim them down in a bit. No worries, it'll get you somewhere else. Okay, pull them down. Now the moment of truth, is this going to go in? Okay, so that's pretty much perfect. Can't see the wires, brilliant. So now we've done all the drilling and all the messing about around here, I think it's time to take this tape off. It stayed on a bit longer than I would have liked. Get this off. We'll get some sticky foam on here so that we can cushion end the vibrations, get that as far as I can, and we'll get this screwed down because we're basically done to this section of the bike. Well, got up to now, thankfully not taking the paint with it. There's always a risk when masking tape's left on for too long. So that's all the tape off. I've just got a bit of surgical alcohol on a piece of tissue here. Just clean it off, get rid of any adhesive from the masking tape, and also remove any oil from this area here and grease that may be on there, so that when I put the sticky foam on, it'll get the maximum adhesion. So I'm going to use this self-adhesive foam. This is from Amazon. A bit of a stitch up there. They caught me out one of those reoccurring orders where it's automatically set to reoccurring. So I got this stuff for a couple of months before I realised I had to stop the subscription. Anyway, by the way, it's handy stuff and it's not that easy to source. It's probably the only place I know where I can get it from. So yeah, not worried that I've got a lot of this. So we're going to cut this down to length along here. It may be a little bit too wide, so I might have to cut it down width-wise as well. So yeah, I'll measure that up, cut that out, and we'll see how we go. Okay, so we've got it cut to length, narrowed it a little bit. I'm just going to offer it up along here and mark our holes. Okay, get some holes in this so that it fits over these threaded rivets. Okay, that's that done. I was thinking of putting 2 layers on, but actually one's going to be enough. I'll push down on that and it's still not really touching the rivets, so that'll be great. So we're going to get the special bolts that we bought with the wider heads. We're going to cut them down because we don't want them sticking any further into this tube and bothering the cables any more than we have to. Cut them down a bit and get that screwed on. Okay, so we've just quickly got the bike off the stand to try the battery on. That's on well firm there. I'm just going to add, before we move on to the next section of this video, is for the actual Halong battery, which is what we've got fitted on here, they actually do some rubber mounts on here. I'm going to buy them as an upgrade for this bike and the other touring bike, and I'm also going to fit some of these extra threaded rivets in here as well, because these have only got the original 2 little bolts with the sort of the bottle mounting. Also want to add, I got these tools afterwards after I fitted them on this bike, and these are actually the threaded rivet tool. They're smaller, they're better for the tight spaces, and to be honest, it's not really worth buying the actual traditional pistol style one, you know. These do the job perfect and they're really good in tight spaces, so yeah, I recommend to use them again. So yeah, these old bikes can have at least 2 more rivets in here and the rubber mounts on there, and if the rubber mounts fit this bike, because this is not a Halong battery obviously, you know, then I shall swap that out, that rubber, this little bit of foam in there, I'll swap that out and I'll put the rubber mount on. Okay, so let's get us back on the rack and move on to soldering these wires. So now we've got the battery bit done, we're going to try and do these wires. Now, I'm going to try and leave enough wire here. Obviously, I don't want meters and meters of it to try and feed back up into this pipe, but I want enough to work on. So I'm sort of going to leave myself that much there and cut that there, I think. So I've got plenty of room to solder. Obviously, I've taken the battery off because I don't want to be touching positives to negatives or anything. Okay. And this one is the lead that's going to go sort of over the top here and up into there. And obviously I want to leave enough of this casing here to go through the hole. So I think I'm probably going to cut them maybe about here. Cut them off. There we go. Strip the outer casing off a ways. Carefully go for the casing but not through the wires. Okay, and that's off. Right, now before I do anything else, because last thing I want to do is get all these soldered up together and realise that I forgot to put this grommet on, which is going to go up into the hole here. I'm going to thread this grommet on first, get that right back out of the way, so that's ready to go back up into the hole afterwards. Plus, I'm going to double heat shrink these after I've soldered them, but also then when that's done, I'm going to put a piece of heat shrink over those as well, over the 2 wires there, so we don't forget that. I'll slot that on as well, because that'd be classic Mac if I forgot to put that on. Okay, so I'm going to strip these wires off the end here and then try and prepare for soldering. Welcome back. It's next day now. I was struggling with the soldering. The new cheapy gas solder was just rubbish. It kept blowing out. I had to resort back to using the electric one, which is only 45 watts. It really needs to be at least 80 for soldering these sorts of wires. So I was really struggling with that. And then I lost the shade, so I thought, yeah, we'll call it a day. But I'm kind of glad I did, because you've probably all been shouting at the screen, you've missed this, and I haven't heard you. But yeah, I've made a bit of a mistake. So just let me turn you around and show you. Now, if you recall, we pulled these cables through to solder with the intention of pushing them back then through here and then putting this sort of this motor connector back through. But this hole, by about 1 millimetre, is only just big enough to get this connector through. So obviously with the thickness of these battery cables, if we do them first, we're not going to be able to get this connector through afterwards. So what we're going to have to do is, I love this, start going backwards on the project, take this off again, pull the wires all the way out, do this cable, connect this cable here to this one, which is slightly damaged. We'll trim that rubber off and get some shrink wrap on it, feed it back through, and then bring these cables back through from above back into here and then solder them. Now, only one good thing I suppose is that I can cut this sort of cable here, this side of the solder, get a bit of fishing line on there as I draw it back through, and I can use the fishing line as a draw cord afterwards. So I suppose we've got a bit of an advantage there, but that's about the only good thing you can say about it. So unfortunately, yeah, start of today we're going to be going backwards. So I'm going to get on with that. I'll get us back to this stage here where we're threading the main cable back through, and I'll bring you back in. So that heat shrink's really got that tight and sealed that in again now. So I've got no worries about this connector there. That's not going to come apart, despite me sort of damaging the casing and having to trim that off. Have remembered to push it through the grommet, thankfully, otherwise we would have been going backwards again. So yeah, both wires are ready for this grommet here. So what I'm going to do now is going to try and push this back up through here. There's quite a lot of cable here. Try and get this back up through the frame. Maybe I'm going to start to regret doing that top one as well. Push that back through the frame and see if I can get this connector through. Okay, so we're basically back to where we started yesterday. I had to make this hole very slightly wider and very slightly oval. I used a burr on the drill. Very, very little I took out. As like I said, made it slightly oval, and I managed to push then the connector up. But it meant taking it all out again, refeeding it all back in, taking all these wires out. So I'm going to leave all these wires out now. I'm not going to put anything back together. I'll just put a screw loosely in here. I'm not going to connect anything up. And then when these are soldered and I've tested everything and I'm happy that everything's right, then we'll start pushing all the wires in, because I was getting way ahead of myself there for a while. Okay, so I'm going to solder these. I'm not going to film that because you've already seen a bit of that, and then I'll bring you back in. Okay, so that's them soldered. I've double heat shrunk them just to make sure they're well sealed and they're not going to sort of bind into each other. Now I'm just going to take one piece of this thicker one, take it over the two joints. That's it, and I'm just going to heat shrink the lot. And now I'm going to take this and try and feed them all back up into here. And there we go, that's up. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and take this off here, take this back off, and see if I can get these actual cables where I want them. Okay, I've got the wires more or less where I want them. It's time to get this grommet pushed up into here, but before I do all this, I've connected the wires up the top here, get the bike down, battery on, and that's test to see if we've got power up to the display and maybe a bit of fun throttle as well. So, the moment of truth. So power onto the battery, and then over to here, see if we've got power to the display. Yay! Okay, so yep, that's fine there. Just out of interest, we ain't got the speed sensor on, but either way, we should get a little bit of fun throttle. Okay, so that looks like that's all working. So I think back up on the stand and see if we can get all these wires and everything tidied away. Okay, I'm not going to lie, that was a complete and utter pig to do that, but a lot of pulling backs and forwards on cables from both ends, and taking this off and away and pulling the cables out of the way, and the bolts in here that hold that on them out of the way. I finally managed to get everything connected, all back in at this end with the grommet on, all connected in this end and the grommet on, and the cable was more or less where I want them. So now it's time to get this piece on here and get the actual motor positioned. Now I've noticed on here I've measured it with the calipers, there's like a 2mm gap between here. I've got some black nylon washers to go in there. I'm going to put them in, position the motor and then lock it off. Okay, so that's it in the final position, and hopefully that's the most difficult bit done, dare I say it. So all that while, and this, as I said before, is a complete pig getting it in here, but it's worth it because it looks really, you know, smooth. You know, no wires hanging out all over the place. I think there's something to be said for that. You know, it looks really quite tidy in there. So as you can probably see, I'm out the shade now. The sun's moved around, it's pretty hot. So I'm going to call it a day, and I'll bring you guys back in when I start this project again. Welcome back. Today's the next day after the wiring, and hopefully that's the bulk of the tedious wiring done. All we've got left to do is the rear gear change sensor and the speed sensor, which is sort of separate and runs along the swinging arm. So yeah, really tedious it was. Most of it was done off camera, but it would have made really boring content. So yeah, best just not to film it. But there's a lot of pushing and poking and fiddling from different ends. It's a real pain in the arse, but I am happy I made the effort to do it because it makes the sort of lines of the bike look a lot cleaner. Okay, so now today we get to move on to something a little bit more exciting, and we're going to start talking chain rings. You may remember that I had concerns about, you know, the gears not lining up too well and me wanting a more dished, a more offset front chain ring, and I actually looked and did some research to try and find something. Now ideally we would have had a 36 tooth chain ring, not because the bike particularly needs it. You could go a lot bigger and the bike will still perform up any incline. I know for my my other bike, which has got a 44 on the front, that my touring bike will take me up any incline, and I can't keep the steering down on the ground and I fall off the back because, you know, I've gone past the point of balance long before the motor gives up. So it's not an issue with power, but it just would have made things a lot easier if we could just bought a 36 tooth chain ring, put it on, put the original chain back on, and job done. But unfortunately, this one's a flat one. We needed a dished one. The best I could get on a 36 tooth was like an 8mm dish, which is the same as the standard Baofeng has. That's a 44 tooth, and that's got an 8mm dish on it. So that was a problem. So that was a 36 really out of it, because my main concerns, I wanted more dish, more offset to get the front chain link more in line with the centre cogs on the rear cassette. So in the end, it is a compromise, as most things in life, and we ended up getting this. It's a 42. It's 2 teeth smaller than the standard, but the main thing is it's got a 14.5 or 15mm offset, so more than double what this one's got, this chain ring's got, and also double anything I could have got on a 36 tooth. So, as with most things mechanical, changing one thing doesn't just change one thing. And my next problem is the standard 11-speed or even the 12-speed chains that you could get, because I need to replace the chain because the larger sprocket. They didn't come along enough. They didn't have enough links in them to get round this front sprocket. I suppose they always assumed you'd use a 36 tooth sprocket on the front, you know. And just didn't make chains long enough. But then I actually found a company. Not only did it make a lot longer chain, more than enough, I'll have to take some links out, but they also make a specialist chain just for e-bikes. And this was from a Taiwanese company called YBN. They've got these chains. They seem to really know what they're talking about. They do various chains made for different speeds, so obviously the more cogs you get on the back, the narrower the chains gradually get, because you've only got so much room to mount it on the rear wheel, and the sacrifice there is you have to move the cogs closer together the more gears you have on the back wheel. So obviously then the chain needs to get narrower. So hopefully this should be the right thickness chain, and this should all go together. Hopefully, we'll have to see. So that's make a start on it. I think we'll just get this front cog on, which is quite an easy job, and we'll try the old chain off, because there's quite a bit of slap on the old chain. So maybe that might have been a bit too big. I don't know. We'll see. So we'll try that, and just out of interest, and then we'll fit this larger chain if not. Okay, so this chain ring should hopefully go straight on. This chain ring is actually purposely made. It's aluminium, and it's made actually for the Baofeng 750 watt motor, so it should be strong enough, and it's sort of the maximum offset you could get and still clear the motor just here, you know, allowing obviously for the chain that's going to go on there as well. I'm using standard bolts that come with it. They've got a little bit of a thread lock on it. If I feel that's got enough thread lock and I feel like they're okay, I'll use them. If not, then I should put some of my own thread lock on as well, because obviously this is a high pressure point, and you don't want your bolts coming loose when you're driving along. Okay, I'm going to gradually tweak these up, going opposite bolts crossways. I don't think it really makes a lot of difference, but just old habits when bolting circular things on with bolts. Careful not to over tighten them. That's why I'm using a small wrench rather than the big wrench, and I'm actually holding it here rather than on the end of the handle, just to make sure I don't get too much pressure on these little Allen bolts and snap them. Okay, that's good enough for now. Obviously we're going to need a few rides on this bike, and then everything will need checking and tweaking up. Okay, nice easy job for the start of the day. Okay, so first we'll try the old chain. Have a look, I don't think there's any sort of direction arrows on this. No, okay. Okay, so I've got the chain on, normal sort of messing about you have to do with it. But anyway, that's on. I don't think that looks too bad. That's on the smallest cog on the back here. So let me just put it on the largest one, the lowest gear, and let you have a look at that. Okay, so I'll just quickly put this pedal on and wound that round and gone through the gears. And that went pretty smooth. All the gears actually, no, I haven't got to do any adjustments. Went in nicely. And there's quite a bit of play, spring left in that. So I don't know what to do really. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the standard chain on for now, give it a good ride and see what it's like. It still seems, like I say, to be plenty of slack in the chain. It's not like it's dead tight. I'll sort of follow the rules that you normally do, the 2-link rule and that, and there's more than that in there. So I think for now I'm just going to leave it and carry on, and then if we need to make any adjustments later we will do. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can get these original pedal shafts on. I quite like these ones. They've got the decals on them, but they're not OTT. I'm going to try and get this cog off. I won't show you on camera. I'm going to take it in the workshop and just get the biggest drill bit I possibly can in the post drill, and see if I can sort of, you know, drill this off and see if this will actually pop off then. Okay, so largest drill bit I had was 90mm and it wasn't big enough. So I've ground the back down. I'm not too bothered about this old cog here. And it looks like you've got sort of teeth there if you can see it. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a tap and see if it's going to come off. Okay, so did it on the workbench, managed to get it off. I think I'll just grind this down flat a little bit more, sort of down to the top of the square bit on there, and then I'll offer it up. I don't think you're going to see this, so we won't use it. We'll just grind it back and then we'll make a decision. Okay, I'll fold the edges down here. I've nicked the edges slightly here, but I found once it's actually on here, you can't see anything, and if you go around to the other side, all this is in the way. So yeah, it's not going to be seen, so I'm happy with that. And of course it's not permanent. I can always change it if you know, I don't like it or find a problem. I can go to the other ones or completely change them, you know, for something completely different altogether. So yeah, no worries there. So let's get those two on. Hopefully that's going to tighten on properly.